Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Today I'm going to be continuing an old series that I haven't done in a little while, and that's Stories of Tzaddikim. Today will be the first episode, B'ezrat Hashem, of the Baal Shem Tov, and this is about his 16th birthday. This is from Chabad.org and from the talks of the previous Rebbe of Lubavitch. I will be reading exactly what the words say. I take no credit for them. And afterwards, B'ezrat Hashem, I'll add in a little intake of what I thought. So, when I was 5 years old, I was orphaned from both my father and mother. The last words spoken to me by my Holy Father before his passing were Yisroelik, fear nothing but God alone. Consonant with my father's words, I was drawn to walk the fields and the great, deep forest near our village. From Cheder, I would make my way to the fields, where I would review by heart what I learnt in Cheder. Often I would sleep over the night in the field or the forest. My guardians, who looked after me and several other orphan boys and girls, did not tolerate this behavior of mine to wander in the fields and the forest, and dealt severely with me. So passed 2 years. One morning I heard in the forest the sound of a human voice. I followed the direction of the voice and came upon the figure of a Jew enveloped in talit and tefillin, praying with a fervor such as I had never before witnessed. I hid myself behind the trees and derived great pleasure listening to the man's praying. I was enthralled by the extraordinary sight and thought to myself that this holy man must be one of the 36 hidden tzaddikim, righteous and saintly people that are in the world. The tzaddik concluded his prayers, removed his talit and tefillin, and began to read from the book of Psalms in a melodious voice. Following his recital of Psalms, the man spent some time in ecstatic Torah study. He then gathered his books and his talit and tefillin and placed them in a sack, lifted the sack onto his shoulders, and set off on his way. At this point, I stepped out from my hiding place and walked towards him. When the man saw me, he asked, "What is a small child doing all alone in the forest? Are you not afraid to be here by yourself?" He answered him, the Baal Shem Tov answered the man, "I like the field and the forest because there are no people, the great majority of whom are arrogant and dishonest. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm an orphan without a father or mother. My father, peace to him, said to me before his passing, Yisroelik, fear nothing but Hashem alone. So I'm not afraid of anything." The man asked me if I was Reb Eliezer's son. When I replied that my father was indeed called by that name, the man took a volume of Talmud, the tractate Pesachim, from his sack, and sat and studied with me for a while. I then joined him on his way without knowing where we were going and what was the purpose of our journey. In our wanderings, we would stop for different periods of time in various cities, towns, villages, and hamlets, sometimes for a few days, sometimes for a week or longer. I never learnt the man's name. I would study with him each day. He never accepted alms from anyone, yet he fed and clothed me and looked after my needs all the time. Thus passed 3 years. One day we stopped in a small settlement, and the man said to me, "Not far from here, in the forest there, lives a learned and God-fearing Jew. I will leave you with him for a while." He then took me to a small hut in the woods, handed me over to its resident, and I was off. I lived in Reb Meir's hut for 4 years, during which time he learnt with me with great diligence all the time. Each day we would go to the village for the daily prayers. None of the villagers were aware that Reb Meir was a sage and a hidden tzaddik. They knew him as a simple workman, a charcoal smelter. In Reb Meir's home, I became familiar with the ways of the hidden tzaddikim and their leader, the great sage and tzaddik, Rabbi Adam Baal Shem. At the conclusion of my years with Reb Meir, I was accepted into the society of hidden tzaddikim, and again began journeying from town to town and from settlement to settlement on various missions, which the society's leadership placed upon me. Before having attained 16 full years, I had gained a significant knowledge of the teachings of Kabbalah, and would occasionally pray with the mystical meditations of the Lyranic Kabbalistic tradition, taught to me by the holy and awesome hidden tzaddik Reb Chaim. On my 16th birthday, 18th of Elul 5474, 1714, I was in a small village. The local innkeeper was a simple Jew who could barely read the prayers and was completely ignorant of the meaning of their words, yet he was an extremely devout Jew whose custom was to say everything and on every occasion, "Blessed be he forever and ever." His wife, the innkeeperess, would constantly avow, "Praised be his holy name." That day I went to meditate alone in the field in accordance with the practice instituted by the early sages to set aside time on one's birthday for private contemplation. I secluded myself, recited chapters of Psalms, and meditated upon the unifications of the divine names as prescribed in the teachings of Kabbalah. Thus engrossed, I was completely unaware of my surroundings. Suddenly, I beheld Elijah the prophet standing before me, a smile on his lips. In Reb Meir's home, and in the company of other hidden tzaddikim, I had on occasion merited a revelation of Elijah the prophet, but never before on my own. So I wondered at the reason for this unexpected vision. I also could not understand the significance of the prophet's smile. Elijah said to me, "You are toiling mightily, investing great effort and concentration to meditate upon the unifications of the holy names implicit in the verses of the Psalms compiled by David, the king of Israel. On the other hand, Aaron Shlomo, the innkeeper, and Zlata Rivka, the innkeeperess, are completely unaware of the unifications that emerge from the utterances, 'Blessed be forever and ever,' expressed by the innkeeper and praised be his holy name, uttered by the innkeeperess. Yet these words resonate through all the worlds, causing a greater stir than the unifications configured by the greatest tzaddikim." Elijah the prophet went on to explain to me the great pleasure that God derives from the words of gratitude and praise uttered by men, women, and children, especially by simple folk, and especially when this is done on a consistent basis, respecting a pure faith, wholesome heart, and a state of perpetual attachment to God. From that point on, I embarked on a new method of serving God, to bring about the speaking of words of praise to God. Wherever I went, I would talk to people inquiring about their health, their children, their livelihood, and they would all reply with expressions of praise to the Almighty. Thanks to God, blessed be his name, and the like, each after his or her manner. For many years, I pursued this practice. At a conference of the Fellowship of Hidden Tzaddikim, it was resolved to adopt this method of divine service, which in turn became the beginning of an approach which stressed the importance of brotherly love towards every Jew, regardless of his or her degree of Torah knowledge or spiritual attainment. I don't think I need to add to this, but I will. And I don't need to, but I will. In this story, we learn the power of the simple service of every person to God. We can never, from our limited understandings, we can never judge or attempt to measure somebody's service of God based on how they look from external factors. We should never judge another person based on their knowledge or lack of knowledge, because in Hashem's eyes, their service to God could be infinitely times greater than someone who you thought was on the greatest level. In other words, I don't want to take away from this story, and it's such a powerful story, I don't feel like I need to add to it, but I will say this, that there's something very powerful in the Kabbalah and meditating on the names of Hashem and consciousness, drawing down different conscious levels of godliness, connecting to different aspects of God, bringing them all together and unifying them all these different aspects and being one with Hashem. And that brings Hashem tremendous amounts of joy. However, what brings Hashem even more joy is the simple service that every Jew has, the simple praises. We all have the ability to serve God in a simple way and praise Him and say, "Hashem, you are the King. You are the greatest." And everyone, this opportunity is very close to everyone. It's right here. It's free. You don't have to pay any money to say, "Hashem, you are the King." And that brings Hashem even greater joy than when a Kabbalist at a high level is meditating upon the names of Hashem and accessing all these different chambers and levels of heaven. So we all have this ability. We all have this opportunity. And it's beautiful to hear a story of the Baal Shem Tov at such a young age, and to get really a glimpse, get an understanding. This is like the first time I really listened to this story. So it's really interesting to see the Baal Shem Tov, how he became the Baal Shem Tov. And may Hashem bless you. Keep up the great work. Thanks to Hashem. Hashem loves us so much. He's given us such incredible opportunities. Let's try to make ourselves conscious. All of us, we should be conscious, God willing, of the greatness and the kindness and the love and the fear that we all need to have of Hashem. God bless you.